Welcome to Becoming More. And this podcast, I am so excited today because we have someone with us that actually is an author. And this book is authored from experience, shifting gears in the crossroads. I've wanted Darryl on my podcast from the moment I heard about his book. And Darryl, it's taken me some time to get you here, yet it is an honor to have you. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Diane. It's an honor for me to be here, and I'm glad we made it. Looking forward to our talk today.
I know, me too. Well, if you're listening to this and you are interested in what to do when those crossroads hit, if you want to know about what are the 4Ds, what are the 4Fs, what are the 4 foundational blocks, what are the 4 phases? I mean, come on. You had me at 4, and then I started looking at your bio, and it's 4 decades of experience. Now, you've been in the C-suite for various companies. You've helped 6 startups, turnarounds, acquisitions. You've raised over $7 million, securing $125 million annualized contracts. Come on, you've got some experience under your belt. So listeners out there, I want you to think about this. What questions would you be wanting to ask him? More importantly, get his book, because the questions will be answered in this book. I read it. It's a pretty quick read. I mean, I loved how short it was, yet packed full of information. So let's dive in here and get this thing going, right? You're committed to faith, family, and then service. You don't even call it business, Darryl. Let's talk about that for just a moment. How important is it to have faith, family, and service as your guidepost?
I think it's quintessential to anything we do in life, whether it's ministry, business, relationship building, our career. I love it in your book. I'll turn this right back on you pretty early on Becoming More. I love what you say. Transformation happens from the inside out. Yeah. And you have to be before you do, you have to do before you have, and you have to have before you can give. I believe giving is that act of service. That is the glue, is sort of the sowing and reaping. It's the investment that you make in others, in companies and others, and it's the investment you make that eventually gets a return. You don't do it in order to get return. No. You do it in order to give, and then the principle of multiplication follows thereafter. So I think service is incredibly important to anything that we do, whether it's the concepts I talk about in the book, or I read another book like yours, Becoming More. I think it's absolutely essential to anything we do in life as a firm foundation of service, servant leadership, and giving to others in order to see, eventually a return come to you.
Well, one of the things that both of us hit heavy on is to don't believe the lies that fear and doubt put in our minds. And I know as a CEO and now a COO, how many people have you seen allow that fear and doubt to actually destroy their lives and their careers?
I will expand the aperture a little bit and just say throughout my 40 years of experience, it's prevalent. I wish I could give you a number. I don't have a number, but if I were to guess, I would say at least half the people that enter the crossroads get crippled in the crossroads and never make it through because they are overwhelmed with fear, or they believe the lies that eventually bombard their mind when they go through the change. I did some research as I was writing the book, and what I found is that about 2 in 10 people are ready for disruption to happen in their careers, their business, their finances. And I got that from the financial industry, specifically regarding careers. Only 2 in 10 people have enough savings to last 6 months
Yeah.
should their job get interrupted, their business fail, or whatever. That means 8 in 10 people are not ready for it. The other thing that I learned in researching for the book is that the U.S. Department of Labor statistics, between 6 and 7 million people are unemployed at any one point in time and looking for a job. Going through those kinds of disruptions can be very, very stressful. And it can be loaded with all kinds of doubts and fears and negative thoughts. And that's one thing I do through what I share in Shifting Gears in the Crossroads, is provide some clarity and some direction and tools for people to use as they enter into those periods of uncertainty and those disruptions, and they're able to combat the fears that enter their mind as they go through those things, so that it gives them a better chance to see. But to answer your question shortly, I think half or more of the people are crippled by fear when they go into disruption.
Disruption is such a thing, and we're standing in those crossroads, and a lot of people, I mean, it comes on us suddenly sometimes. You're not expecting that to happen, and life just jolts you, right, into something. And so all of a sudden, do people recognize that they have to change at that point? Or do you think a lot of them go into victimhood and just sit in the crossroads?
So I think that's a pretty close half and half break again, and maybe even a little bit more pessimistic. Probably less than half the people really recognize the need for change. In the book, I talk about Jim, the businessman, and Jim goes into a meeting one day of his business partners. He's an entrepreneur. He's invested in a business. He and a handful of people create a business from scratch. Built $0 to $5 million in revenue the first year, on the way to $50 million. He's sacrificed. He has compromised his faith, his family's fitness and finances, because he's been so focused on this. He goes into this meeting thinking it was going to be a planning meeting for the day, and gets there, and all of a sudden it's a wake-up call, because after the meeting he finds himself on the outside of that business looking in, and he's shocked. And he didn't see it coming. But I would say, and as we read the character, the signs were there. There was a situational analysis that he missed, and that there were signals. And I think that's most people, they either refuse to see the sign, so they put themselves in disbelief and they ignore it.
Right.
If they don't step back and look at the situation that's leading up to the infamous wake-up call meetings or their crossroads experience, they miss elements that they should be watching. And then there's usually a signal in there. If we miss the first two, then just get the last one, and sometimes they miss the signal. So I think a lot of people miss the signal. They don't understand the situation. They don't fully comprehend the signal, going through missing the sign on that first step, rather. And I think, like Jim, most people are not ready for it and don't see it coming. Or if they see it coming, they ignore it and they're not ready for it.
Yeah, the crossroads, I love that terminology. And so I'm curious, what real life moment made this framework just an absolute non-negotiable for you?
Well, like Jim, I had a similar experience in my career. 14 of those years was spent doing startup and turnarounds, and it was entrepreneur. I was an entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur for 14 years. I did 6 projects. Some of them went really well, some of them not so well. In the 6th project that I did, it was going well until, like Jim, I found myself on the outside looking in. It was a major crossroads experience. And what I had found was, not only was I not ready for it, but when it happened, I realized I was lost, because during the course of that pursuit, I found out that my identity was wrapped up inside that business. So when the business went away and when I was on the outside looking in, I was lost. My identity had gone, and I had, on the altar of sacrifice, my family, my own finances, my health, and my faith. I wasn't a terrible person, but things get deprioritized. And when I went through that crossroads experience, I carefully documented what I did to recover. I followed some steps, some process. I did some tools. I networked and connected with people. And as I pulled through that crossroads experience, that became the basis of shifting gears in the crossroads. So when I talk about the 4 phases of
Yeah.
transformation, and I talk about 5 essential steps to build a compelling case for change, and the 4 Ds and the 4 foundational Fs, they're all things that I learned going through that crossroads and experienced and proved out before I ever wrote it down. And oh, by the way, through the years after that, long before I even published the book, I would counsel and mentor entrepreneurs, early career folks, people I met in ministry, in the church, and some of the social organizations with the principles and concepts all along to help them navigate their disruptions. But for me, that first crossroads experience jolted me, tested the very core of who I thought I was, found out that I was wrapped up in the business and my identity became lost, and shifting gears in the crossroads came out of that.
Well, and see, so there's always something great that comes out of it. Yet at first, we kind of misdiagnose. Like, let me ask you, did you find yourself maybe not going to church as much because you had other priorities on the business, or giving up, as you said, your family time a lot of times, and then all of a sudden you're just jolted and you say, it's a transition I didn't ask for. So let's talk about Ted for just a moment on the crossroads. You give all these great stories. So let's bring some characters into here and tell us about Ted and the deeper lesson that he found.
So Ted and Ted's experience is what becomes the metaphor that I carry throughout the book. Ted is an entrepreneur, like many entrepreneurs, like Jim and like me and my other experience that I just described. Started the business from ground up, scratch, nothing. He was a waste hauling and recycling business. That was his deal. He's going to revolutionize the world. He's going to conquer the world and the galaxy, and just have become the next multi-gazillionaire, and through that, which is the part of every entrepreneur's dream. And so, but it was small enough where he during the day would do the business planning and selling accounts. At nights he would actually drive routes. On one particular day, his regular driver called in sick, and Jim had to stop what he was doing with the normal course of activities and managing, growing a business. He had to jump into a trash truck and drive trash routes. And the challenge to to Ted that day was that he was distracted and he wasn't paying attention and he was wanting to get done fast. And not to give the full story away, just to be a spoiler alert, he finds himself in the middle of a crossroad. He's made a wrong turn. He's missed a turn, and he's faced with a decision. Do I take the easy route out? I don't change what I'm doing. I back up a little bit and hit the turn that I missed, or do I do the more prudent thing? Do I reposition the truck? Do I rebuild the route? Do I reemerge into trafficking, loop all the way back around and hit the accounts safely, and then finish a little safer that day? He makes the wrong decision. He decides to back up, and in the course of doing so, he crushes a car that had pulled into his blind stop. Didn't hurt anybody, could have killed people. The car was crushed, the compartment was crushed, the passengers bailed. But as a result of that event, Ted in the crossroads realized he made a wrong decision. He didn't want to change. And his wrong decision almost resulted in injury and death, and became a life lesson for him as he moved on beyond that element of the crossroads. And that's where the 4 phases of transformation came. And that becomes the metaphor of repositioning, rebuilding, reemerging, and realizing through the crossroads is what he should have done. And it's what we should do as we confront these disruptions in our lives.
Well, and I love that repositioning and rebuilding, all of the 4 phases. Now, also, though, you talked about the 4 Fs: family, faith. You just said faith first. I know that. Faith, family, fitness, and finances. You kind of touched on that a little bit. Yet, why are those 4 foundational pieces?
I think they're critically important. I mean, when you think about them, 2 of them are external, 2 of them are internal. Faith is certainly internal, and fitness is sort of internal. You make choices, you make decisions, and commit to your health. Family, friends, that's external, and your finances is external. Those 2 external and 2 internal things, I think, work together and make 4 foundational bases, or 4 foundational pillars to a structure of an overall strategy that we have for life. Of the four, though, I would argue that faith is the most important because it becomes a cornerstone. It becomes the glue that holds them all together. So the moral values, the ethical nature, the ethics, how we move, it's contained in those four things, whether internal or external. It drives and governs who we are. If we're centered, if we're based in faith, and we are able to have healthy families and good relationships, and we take care of our finances and we manage our health, it provides a strong foundational core and anchor for us to go forward. If any one of those things gets out of balance, it creates instability in the overall structure of, if you call it a house, the house. It keeps instability and structure in the house. So those four elements are key, I think, to becoming the foundation.
Yeah. So a lot of high performers, though, they forget some of those things. And all of a sudden, a lot of the faith thing is what I find. They still have faith. They still are very spiritual, yet they kind of start dropping out of faith activities because of the priorities that they feel they have to do themselves. So it's kind of like self versus having faith in a higher power. Why do you think high performers do that?
I think they fight the fire of the day, especially entrepreneurs. I mean, they're consumed by what coal is burning the hottest, what fire is immediately available, where is the immediate pressure. Unfortunately, it's easy. I'm doing an 8-week course right now with our small group on shifting gears in the Crossroads, and every session we end with a call to action, and it's based on 7 spiritual disciplines that we have
Oh,
to
I
do:
love that.
worshiping, reading the word. It's worship, prayer, fasting in some way that connects you with God, your higher power, your spirituality. It's praying, it's reading, it's journaling, writing down what you're hearing, is connecting with
Good.
people. Well, the problem is it's easy to not do some of those things every day. If you get caught up into what I call the whirlwind of daily activities, it's easy to say, "Well, I'll do that tomorrow," or "I'll do
Right.
that the next day." And all of a sudden, tomorrow comes, and the next day comes, and next week comes, and it's 30 days, and you haven't connected spiritually. And that's where that anchor starts to fall out. And that block, if you think of 4 foundational blocks, a great illustration in the book, readers will see when they get to that part of the book where you have 4 Jenga blocks. You move one of those Jenga blocks out of there, the entire structure falls. And if faith really is that thing that holds all of them really together, it's going to fall even faster when that gets either removed or unbalanced, because we're listening to the whirlwind and not staying true to the anchor that's going to give us long-term success.
Yeah. Well, you talk about balance in the book, and like we have seasons that pressure us. I mean, there's some seasons that are higher pressure and some that are lower pressure. Talk to us about timing and what is the right timing and what does balance actually look like?
So I think it's critical. I'm sort of a geek. I really operate off of a schedule, and I operate off of lists. Some people are not list people. Some people say, "Don't give me a list. I don't want a calendar. I'm just going to freewheel it." I think that's putting yourself in harm's way. But what I learned over time, because I had failures, like I described when earlier on, like Jim, I was on the outside looking in, everything fell apart. I didn't have time for faith, and I didn't take time for my
Yeah.
family. I looked into some of my relationships. I had a son and a daughter that I wasn't spending enough time with. My wife, she's a saint. I think I need to promote her forward for sainthood for putting up with all those years, because she endured, me being distant and being head over heels in this. But what I learned is you have to schedule time for it. That's the way you fight the whirlwind. Put down on your schedule, for this 30 minutes, you are going to shut all the emails off, not answer the phone, forget the text messages, and you're going to have introspection in that time of faith. Matter of fact, in our call to action, what we're doing this semester as we work through this series on our book, that's the call to action. Find 30 minutes a day, put it into your schedule, and then whatever combination of 7 disciplines happen, let it happen, because that's a way to ensure that you don't forget. You and I today, we agreed to meet at a certain time and have this discussion. If you would have just said, "You know what, I'm too caught up in my day-to-day activity, I can't meet with DJ," I would have been here waiting for you, and you wouldn't have come. Vice versa. If we wouldn't have committed to our schedule, it wouldn't have happened. That's how we need to think about our faith and our family. put it in schedule, commit to it, and then don't let anything, any whirlwind violate that.
You know, it's interesting because in a program I wrote called Bold Business Objective, A Life by Design, I actually had one of the bold laws that it's not about selling real estate, it's about following a schedule. When we follow the schedule and we put the right things in the schedule, we do things right. Most people, they don't have a schedule. They go to work and they go, oh, whenever I want to do whatever, right? Literally, in my business, I even had the admin have to have a schedule and put down when they were going to do emails, when they were going to do this, when they were going to do that. So I love what you're saying in your book. I think you and I get along in so many different ways, and you've led a lot of people through this change. So what do leaders do that accidentally increases uncertainty on their team?
I think if they don't clearly communicate vision, that becomes a problem because with vision, I think comes clarity. And then with clarity, trust is increased across the organization, the leadership team, the immediate team, the extended team. And I think it evolves in that order. I like, one of the scriptures I read is where there's no vision, the people perish. It's a proverb. It's in the Old Testament scripture. And I believe that if you don't write the vision, if you don't make it plain upon tables for people to run that read it, I think there's lack of clarity and there's lack of direction in the life, and then it creates instability throughout the whole organization. I think it's a major flaw that within some leaders, and I've done it. That's why I can tell, because I've failed. There have been times when I have demonstrated a failure and I haven't been proud of it.
Well, every leader makes mistakes, that's for certain. You know, I had dinner with Jack Welch and Susie, his wife, and I asked him that one question: how often did you talk about your vision and mission? And he said, every day. I talked about it so much, I thought if I had to do it one more time, I'd throw up. Yet the people need to hear it. Now, he had thousands of companies and he developed so many leaders. And you too have developed a lot of leaders. So what does commitment look like when you're developing all these people? You say you have a group, and of course they commit to doing certain things. Yet let's talk about that word commitment. What does it look like to you?
Well, I think it's a two-way street, and I think it is rooted in sacrifice on behalf of the leader. Think about your experience. You've developed teams yourself, and you've had successful companies, have successful companies. And as I read the book, the thing that I took away from it is one of the things that you did is you took time to build relationships with your team and with your members. You don't become a successful realtor. I'm telling you something you don't know. You don't become a successful realtor without developing relationships, but it
That's
takes
true.
time, right, to do that. So I can turn this right back on you and ask you the same question. It's about spending time, making sacrifices, and pouring into these relationships and other people, because when that happens, that sacrifice occurs. That's when trust builds, that's when confidence builds, and that's when productivity, if that's an output of the relationship, occurs, and or at least deeper engagement and greater basis for success. Let me flip it back at you. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, see, I believe totally that commitment to me is you'll do whatever it takes. If you're responsible to do something and it's not done and the clock hits 5 o'clock, hey, it's not done. It needs to get done. And therefore, why would you leave, right? Because it didn't get done. Oh, I'll
Yeah.
do it tomorrow. And I find the people that say I'll do it tomorrow really end up being so far behind that they have to schedule those items in. Otherwise, every day they'll get further and further behind. But I would say things like, okay, you come home and all of a sudden you see this kid, they're lying on the ground, and next to them is a bottle of poison, and it looks like maybe they've taken some. What do you do? And of course, everybody would say, well, I call 911. And I go, the phone doesn't work. They go, well, I'd run next door to my neighbor, and neighbor's not home. And I'd put them in my car and take them. No, car doesn't start. And every time they would say what they would do, I would throw a roadblock in until finally, if they ever did, and some of them never did say, I'd pick up the kid running and screaming down the road until I could get help. Now Now, I think they're committed. But prior to that, it's just talk. Talk is really cheap. So, what do you think supports the systems for your people to have commitment?
I think it's a lot tied to a lot of what you just mentioned. It's about doing what you say you're going to do. I think leading by example is critical. I don't ask anybody on any of my teams now or ever to do anything I wouldn't do for them or with them. You can't know every job and every company and every detail and be able to perform it, but you can at least spend time trying to understand the challenges and the situations that those that do perform those jobs incur. And then as a leader, try to break some of the ties or run interference and remove roadblocks for them. I think as you are able to do that, and they see you do that, roll up your sleeves, get your hands dirty. Again, take a little bit of sacrifice your time, put them first, build trust in a relationship, run through obstacles and help carry them through it. I think that inspires them to commit to you and commit to the organization and to running with that poisoned child down the street until they get help. Prior to that, if they don't see me willing to roll up the sleeves and take the same child down the street yelling for help the way that I would expect them to be or expect them to do, I think that they may be a little bit standoffish and maybe not as good at executing that type of thing.
Yeah, I've always said you're not going to outwork me. I believe that as a leader, you got to show them you're willing to do whatever it takes, like you just said. And as far as with someone, what do you think it is about some people, man? They'll ask questions, they'll find out as much as they possibly can, and then there's others, they don't want to ask questions. They just put their head down and they do a great job. Yeah. How did you develop your people to ask more questions of you as the CEO?
I ask a lot of questions of them.
There you go.
I flip the tables, and every time they ask me a question, I ask a question. I wasn't trying to be belligerent, and I wasn't demeaning.
No.
But I found if I could get ahead and ask questions in advance, that it could get them thinking, and they could lead themselves to the same conclusion. One of my pet peeves as a leader is I don't like it when people bring me problems. I mean, I don't mind problems. I'll roll my sleeves up and I'll help solve it. That's the servant leader. It's not about that. But I'd like for somebody to bring a solution with the problem. So get back to your question, asking questions or asking questions, providing solutions. Let's have a meaningful dialogue. There's a difference and it's a fine line. But I ask questions of the team, hopefully in advance of them asking of me, and I instill a behavior where if there's a situation or a problem, I'm okay to listen to it, but let's talk about solutions. Let's not question ourselves to death. Let's not go down a path where we become frozen and paralyzed, and let's do it. And as for the other group, the ones that don't ask questions to do, I think that there's some people like that. There's some people who are excellent doers. They may not have the skill to be introspective and to ask questions and to think strategically. You need some of those folks, and you have to manage people where they are, leverage their strengths, try to cover for the weaknesses, and balance all the variables on the team because we're all different personalities. We all have different strengths and weaknesses, and the degree to which we can offset those strengths and weaknesses and invest in each other's the weaknesses or in each other's lives or approaches, I think we can leverage the power of the team. It's the power of the other in this equation.
Well, that's what I love. I mean, like I am not a detailed person. Oh, I can do that. It just drains my energy to have to sit there and make sure that there's a period at the end of every sentence, right? So to speak. Yet other people, they gain energy from those details. So we have to bring people around us that make up for our weaknesses. And a lot of times people want to be like you, the leader. What do you look for? What's maybe three top qualities that you look for in someone that you're hiring?
So there's three buckets. I mean, obviously there's a specific need, so there has to be some level of technical functional competence and demonstrating that through historical performance in education. So let's just say technical functional, that's kind of table stakes to enter. Quickly behind that, I look for character. I look for what I call the soft skills of leadership.
Yeah.
I look for communication. I look for their ability to collaborate. I look for do they have the potential in their relational to problem solve and troubleshoot? Do they build relationships, or do they dissolve relationships. So I think it's kind of that soft approach, the character, the style, the approach, and how they execute things. I'm not one who's Machiavellian. I don't think the end always justifies the means. I think that how you do things can determine long-term viability of things. You and I both know we can command and control and tell somebody, get that done by tomorrow or else, and they'll probably go do it. That's a short-term solution, but probably not too good for instilling confidence, building trust. And so I want to have leaders that understand the difference. We have to hold people accountable. I got it. There's expectations and goals. And I'm not suggesting that it's a free-for-all, but what I am suggesting is that there's a way to do it, and the approach is as important as the results that you get because it determines whether it's long-term or short-term viability. So technical, functional, I think some of the softer skills in terms of collaboration, relationship building, and leadership, I'd say there's probably a 2 and 3. Probably some of that's wrapped up in 2 or 3. But those are the critical elements that I look for in other leaders.
Well, and the values. Are you finding that values in today's world, that a lot of the companies, they're not discussing values as much as they used to?
Yeah, and I would say that comes out because it's the basis for how they behave. I think if somebody is a servant leader, I think if somebody builds relationships and collaborates really well, I think that's based on the value that they have within. That's an outward manifestation of an values what we have inside us. And I agree that today, even more so than ever, I think it's difficult to find people with values, and then companies even more so that talk about values. Your comment about Jack Welch is it, mission and vision and, translating that into values. A lot of people see that as unnecessary fluffy stuff. And yet, if you don't do those things, it will absolutely shake the foundation of what you're trying to do. And you may get short-term results, but you won't get long-term results. And I think that's how that works together.
Yeah, and
I mean,
that's
what
what
do
I
you see?
love. You're bringing all this vast experience into this book. And you've got the 4 phases, the 4 F's we discussed. You've talked about the foundational blocks. You've got the 4 D's. You talked about the how, and you went in to recognize the need for change. I'm going to bring us kind of back to the start here. You said we need to recognize the need for change. And then you brought up about the current state in your book is the second part. Then the third part, identify the future state, and then map out a plan with 1 or 2 paths. So let's go through some of those things. How do you actually do that with someone, or maybe even with yourself? Do you sit down and start writing all this stuff out?
So yeah, the answer is short. Short answer to that is yes. Recognizing the current state. It's getting back to Ted. Ted had a problem. He missed his turn. That's pain. Okay, he had a need to change. That was recognizing a need to change. It's unavoidable.
Right.
Jim faced that wake up call in the business meeting. That was a need for change. He really had no choice there. Decision was made for him. So when I work through the exercises, most people that end up in the crossroads have already experienced the need for change, whether it's by their choice, the company's choice, or some external factor. So that's an easy one to talk about. The current state, stepping back, what I always ask people to do is go through an exercise. Okay, you see the need to change, but before we react, let's ground ourselves. Let's see what else is going on. What else is happening in our life, in our career, in our ministry that may be contributing to the pain, to the need for change? What else is happening that may be offsetting it? Maybe it's not all negative. Maybe there's some positive things that are happening. I try to get people in assessing the current state to write down kind of have and a have not. I talk about have and have nots in the book. The haves are what's going well in the current state, and the have nots are what's not going well. And in the book, I talk about the 4 F's. So think about not only what you're looking at for the need for change, but what's going well in faith and what's not, what's going well in family, what's going well in fitness, what's going well in finances, and what's not. And then write it down. I just love writing stuff down, because I think when you write something down, you're more likely to remember. What's the statistic? You have to write something down or rehearse it 7 times before it comes I think writing it down helps increase your chances of really learning and being committed and understanding it. So yeah, I think it's an exercise of writing down the haves and have-nots and the foundational areas of your life, because what we get onto then, and the next step is identify what good looks like. Once you know what the pain is, once you know what the current state looks like and what you have and have not, by doing that, there's sort of a mirror image of what good needs to look like, a correction of the things that are wrong and the reinforcement of the things that are right. And looking into the future now, you can start to paint a picture of what does good look like? What does the future state look like? And that's where vision and mission come in. And as we're working through these exercises, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but until you know what your vision is, what you want to be, and your mission is what you want to do, you really can't know what those paths look like, because your vision and your mission are the grounding elements. That's the core. That's the inside out in your terms. It's the A to C with the B. Until you know those things, you really can't paint a good picture of what future looks like. So write it down, work through the exercises back and forth, and it starts to evolve as you work through the 5 essential steps to build a compelling case for change.
Well, and that's the part as you start mapping all of this out, and then you have, it sounds to me like having someone come alongside you to help out and actually be your friend instead of ignoring you makes a big difference. We have to have that support as we go through the crossroads. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about shifting gears in the crossroads with Darryl. And, as I look at all of these things, first of all, your biography, and you've done a lot, Darryl. I'm going to leave it at that. But the pulling ahead, that emerging phase, when I got to that part of the book, and you said, it is God above who judges. He decides who will rise and who will fall. But God is the judge. He pureth down one and setteth up another. See, all these things, I love how you bring this into play. So as people start re-emerging, right, after they've been in the crossroads, and I'm just jumping to the end with the end in mind, as they re-emerge, what's happening there in their brain and with their family? What are some things they've been through?
By the time you get to reemerge, you're actually catching up to where you would have been had you never experienced that disruption. In the book, I give a graph, I give a model, and I wish I could recreate it here. The readers will see it when they get in there, but
Right.
there's a line. It's a horizontal line. It's the path we're currently on, and when you go through the 4 phases, sometimes you reposition. You actually sometimes take a step back. And then you begin to rebuild. That's where you gain momentum. You start to reconstruct things as you work out your vision, your mission, and you start to set goals in the foundational areas of life. When you get to that inflection point where the horizontal line was and where the new curve is that you're on, that is reemerge. It's where you start to emerge or achieve higher levels of success, satisfaction, fulfillment than you would have ever achieved had you not changed and stayed on that curve. That's when real momentum comes. And in the book, I talk about, for the nerds out there, the things that like detail, orientation, and process, I suggest in there how to evaluate, criteria for how to evaluate which stage you're in. What does it look like in reposition, reemerge, rebuild, reemerge, and realize in the 4 foundational areas of your life? That can be a guideline. Ultimately, the reader has to figure out what their criteria is. I offer some as a suggestion from my own experience. But when you get to reemerge, the criteria that's set for faith, family, fitness, and finances is far better than it ever would have been had you not changed. So in my case, when I had my wake-up call, my version of what Jim experienced, for me, in the family area, I was having a regular cadence with my daughter, who was young at the time. We found daddy and daughter things to do that we enjoyed and time together. My son, things that a son and a father can do. My wife, we had a great cadence. We have, even to this day, Saturday morning, nothing happens. We are coffee time. We don't look at the cell phones. We don't get on the computer. That's our connectivity time. If we miss, that became a cadence. Our relationship got even richer during that time period. That's one of the aspects of the family. Same thing with finances. By the time you get to the reemerge, You might have sacrificed a little bit in terms of business performance or income when you go through reposition. Maybe you step back and you take a lower paying job, or you start another business that has no income.
Yeah.
However, that investment catches up. So by the time you get and reemerge, now you're starting to realize the financial benefits. So each of the four foundational blocks, when you get into reemerge, you pass up where you would have been in each one of those blocks had you never changed.
Well, and the other part is, well, because you've become so much more. A lot of times people think, oh, that's who they were, and they forget that, well, it's kind of like going to a family reunion. And you go, wow, you've grown up so much. And you go, well, yeah, so have I, though. We forget that as we grow, other people do as well. Well, I knew them when, and they know that, and they keep you there instead of going, I've grown, and so has this person grown. So let me ask you, what does comfort cost people in the long term when they just get so comfortable? They get in this crossroad and they kind of snuggle in and they don't reemerge.
Yeah, I think comfort can be the enemy of progress. And I feel a lot of people that I've met through the years have become comfortable, don't want to change. And really, I think comfort gets back to the issue of change. Are you ready and willing and able to change, to grow? Not every crossroad is a negative experience. You might have a crossroad of opportunity, but if you're set in your ways, you're not willing to risk something, you're not willing to do something different, then you're probably not going to be able to leverage or compare that. On Crossroads, I talk a lot about the disruption and negative, but Crossroads can be positive. Comfort, to me, equates to change. So when I hear somebody's comfortable, I hear that they really don't want to change, which to me is a sad day, because if their desire is to grow and to reemerge and to realize a dream, which we all have, God's called us to do something, to be something, and to do something,
Right.
and it's more really than what we're at today. I think they're passing up a wonderful opportunity.
Well,
It's
isn't
in
that
your terms, it's going from A to C without going through B. Comfort means you don't want to go through B, right? You want to stay at, you don't want to go through B. You want to stay at A.
well, and it's so interesting because leaders, we have to shift gears internally before we ask our team to. We have to shift gears internally before it shows up on the external world, right? People forget sometimes that the internal world is far greater than the external world. And that's what I love about your book is I don't care whether you're facing a personal transition or launching a new business. This book is fabulous. It gives us that pivoting point. It gives us all the steps, literally the 4 F's, the 4 D's, the 4 phases, the 4 foundational blocks. And to connect with Darryl, we have all of his information down below. And if you like this podcast, be certain to subscribe to it and Becoming More. And so I just want to end with this, and you can add whatever you desire, Darryl. Yet, what would it look like to choose growth today rather than in the future? Like a lot of kids today say, oh, I don't have what it takes right now. Yet they're kind of putting that growth off, or maybe not investing in themselves. So what would it look like to choose growth today rather than someday?
I think it's transforming and changing from the inside out, like you say, and becoming more. And what does that mean? To me, it means investing in yourself. It means reading books. It means challenging your paradigms. It means discovering who you are, or who you're supposed to be, and really what you're supposed to be doing. It's assessing the current state. It's understanding a need for change, assessing the current state, paying a different pace. The 5 essential steps to build a compelling case for change. We have to be willing to look at that today in order to figure out, are we positioned on the right track, or do we need to change in order to grow? And without growth, without change, there is no growth. And without growth in our lives, we risk becoming irrelevant. We risk becoming stifled. We risk becoming miserable. One of the biggest definitions, I think, of misery is getting 30, 40 years into life and looking back and saying, man, I should have done something different 20, 30, 40 years ago, and I didn't. Because at that point, it's too late to recover. It's not too late to do something different. But the definition, I think, of pain is having to look back, realizing that I should have grown, I should have changed, I should have invested in myself, I should have gone through a crossroads, positively and negatively, and I should have moved on through to those 4 phases of transformation, and I didn't. That's a hard conversation to have with yourself.
Well, over your 4 decades, and I've been in business, actually, I've been working since I was 5 years old. And yet I look at this and I go, investing in myself just seemed to come natural. A lot of my money went towards investing in myself. How about you? Were you growing every year, doing more and more, learning more and more?
Every year, I don't like to read. That may surprise you. I've just written a book. For some reason, I don't like to read, but I have forced myself to read through the years, and
Yeah.
um, because I know it's critical for my success. I'm a slow reader. I don't read, but I do, and I find out I enjoy it when I do. But so reading books is essential. Getting extra education when you have a chance, going for executive education or a two week course here, a 1 week course there, technical, functional, or leadership. And I know that you have great respect for one of your mentors, John Maxwell. Years ago, I began reading his book. Some of the most impactful things that I practice even today was developed from the winning attitude and develop the leader within you and understanding the law of the lid. I knew back then when I read that book, I had a lid problem and I had to fix the lid problem or I would have never gotten through the rest of my 40 years the way I did. And it all came down to me being willing to invest either in reading, listening to books, going to extra courses and helping myself to at least change my thought process and grow from the inside out.
Well, it's so interesting because I do a mentorship program with John now. Uh, Actually, it's my mentorship program, and I asked John to come alongside me. And he does a call every month, and I do a call, Zoom calls, and then we have events that the people come to. And 29 years later, with him still my mentor, I'm still learning. I don't know that we ever stop learning. And I love his statement, you grow within or you go without.
Yeah.
And with that, you have helped us grow today. Folks, get this book. You can go on Amazon. You can get in touch with Darryl. He'll make sure that you get it. Isn't it in Walmart and
It is
Target?
all the major platforms.
Barnes and Noble, everything, right? Shifting gears in the crossroads. I loved this book. I thought it was fabulous. It's an easy read and chock full of great, great information. So, Darryl, thank you so much for being on our call today. And just good luck with the book. I know you've already sold a bundle of them. Won't be long. It just came out. How,
Back in December, yeah,
yeah. I mean, that's like, wow.
not too
Just
long ago.
no, a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
Shifting gears in the crossroads. Thank you so much. What last things do you want to say to our listeners today?
Your crossroads doesn't have to be a disruption that sets you up for failure. It can be and should be the disruption that sets you up for success and for advancement. One thought I would leave is as you're going through the crossroads, it gets back to what one thing that Dianna said early in the call about serving others. Remember, while you're in the crossroads and you're working your way through and you're trying to get clarity and direction, don't forget to serve others on your journey through. And I think about the story of Joseph. He's a biblical character. We read him in our small group fellowship. He was in prison at one point in time, and while he was in prison, he met 3 people: a Pharaoh, a butler, and a baker, and he helped them. He interpreted dreams for him. Eventually, they forgot about him initially, but eventually they pulled him through. And that was one of the last major milestones he had achieved before he fulfilled his dream. We, like Joseph, have to be remembered, have to be mindful of helping other people as we're going through our crossroads. It becomes the seed that we invest, that we plant, and it will reap rewards as we get down the pathway. So I love the concept about servanthood and servitude and helping others. And my word today to everybody is help others as you're going through the crossroads.
Is it that's key. That's a bottom line we're going to end with. Quit thinking about yourself.
Yep.
Go out and serve others, and the whole world becomes better, right?
Indeed. Yes, indeed.
Darryl, you hit on the key point right there at the end. The whole thing was fabulous. I love that. think more about others.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. If you've enjoyed it, once again, hit that subscription button down below because you too deserve to become more.
Thanks, Diana.
Thank you.